Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today is day 33 in our 90-day SAT prep series. Today I'll be taking you through about 20 to 25 minutes of the math section and then about 30 minutes with the SAT reading section. Okay. So as I go through, I'll be trying to give you my tips, tricks, advice, strategies, and ways to be efficient on the SAT from the perspective of someone who scored 1590 on the SAT, scored 800 on the math section on back-to-back SATs, and scored perfectly on the writing section on back-to-back SATs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and give you insight into my thoughts and what I see when I take SATs and SAT practice tests to really try to help you become more efficient, become a better test taker, and really understand how to get to the right answer. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the math section. After the math section, we'll switch over and do the reading section, but for now, we're going to start with this. Okay. So today we're going to be doing problems 24 through 30 from a 2019 SAT released test. So it was released by the state of Maine. It's from 2019. So I'll be doing 24 through 30 of the math with calculator section. Keep in mind these are going to be some of the more difficult SAT math problems because they're at the end of the SAT math multiple choice section, so they'll be more difficult. That's why I'm only doing 6 today, right? I'll probably end up finishing a little bit earlier than the 30 minutes I normally do, and then we'll switch over to the writing section. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Also make sure to like, share, and subscribe, but that's on another note. All right, question 24. So in the xy plane, the graph of a linear equation of the form y equals mx plus b and the graph of an exponential equation of the form y equals ab to the power of x both contain points 1, 3, and 2, 4. If the point rs is on the graph in the linear equation and the point rt is on the graph of the exponential equation, where 0 is less than r and r is less than 4 and s is greater than t, which of the following must be true? Okay, so at first this might overwhelm you, and that's understandable. But one thing we can do when we have a lot of points like this and we feel overwhelmed and we don't know where to go is we can make a graph. Okay, so in this case, I see I have 2 points, right, or 2 equations. I have one that's linear and I have one that's exponential. So what do I know about linear versus exponential? Okay, let's go ahead and make a quick chart of what we got here. Okay, we know that they both contain points 1, 3, and 2, 4. So let's plot those points down. We got 1, we'll put 1 here, we'll put 2 here. We'll say 3 is here, and we'll say 4 is up here. Okay, so we got 0.13, and we got 0.24. Okay, so we got 0.24 there. Okay, well, what do we know about this linear equation? Well, we know it's linear, right? So we know it's going to go like this. Okay, let's go ahead and draw that. We know it's a line, so it's going to look something like that. Okay, now what do we know about this exponential equation? Well, we know it has these 2 points, right? It's got a point at 1, 3, and 2, 4. We also know exponential equations, they go like this, right? They get exponentially greater, right? They have an increasing slope like that. Okay, so it's going to look something like that. Now, keep in mind then, I have these points here. Each one has that same x value, okay? And then they have different s and different t, okay? So s is the one for the linear, t is the one for the exponential. Now I'm asked for where s is greater than t. Well, where do I see s is greater than t? S is that y part. I see it's greater than t between this 1 and 2, but I know after 2, t would be greater, okay? And I know anything before 1 and t would probably start moving up, right? But I know for sure between 1 and 2, I know for a fact that this s, this linear part, this linear y, is going to be greater than that t. Okay, so my answer there has to be b between 1 and 2. Okay, notice how easy that was when we graphed it out. So in certain situations, if you're given a situation where you have lots and lots of points, right? In this case, look at how many pairs of points we have. Okay, see how we have 4? I'm going to look to do one of 2 things, right? And I have 2 equations here. Now, what I'm going to look to do is one of 2 things, okay? Either I'm going to look to do something with the slope, because if I'm given 4 pairs of points, that's an indication to me that maybe I have to do something with the slope and finding something that's parallel or perpendicular. But in this case, I wasn't asked anything about being parallel or perpendicular, so I knew it probably wasn't going to necessarily have to do something with slope. So then I started graphing it because I saw that I had one that was linear, one that was exponential, right? And I'm asked for where one y value is greater than the other, and I already had a pair of points where they each intersected. Okay, so by drawing that out in that graph, I was able to quickly see the fact that this s had to be greater than that t between that 1 and that 2. Okay, so graphing a situation like this can be very, very helpful and make things a lot easier. So answer for 24 there is going to be B. All right, now we've got question 25, so let's go down and see what that's got to say. All right, I see I've got a table. I've told 2 independent surveys asked random samples of 500 people about the distance they commute to work each day. The results of the surveys are detailed in the table below. So we have a daily commuting distance, 2 different surveys. We got their mean distance in miles. We got standard deviation in miles. Okay, one thing that jumps out to me right away is standard deviation is the same. Which statements are true based on these surveys? So let's go ahead and run through our options. If we're asked for what's true about these surveys, we basically have no choice but to go A through D till we find one that's true. A, there is greater variation in the distribution of the distances people commute to work in survey A. Well, no, we know that their deviation is the same, right? They have different means, but their standard deviation is the same. Okay, so deviation is going to be the same. One isn't going to be different than the other. Option B, there's greater variation in the distribution of distances people commute to work in survey B. Also not true. Okay, we know they're the same distribution, or I'm sorry, not the same. The same variation, right? They have the same variation. There's not greater variation in one than the other. Okay, C, the variation in the distribution of the distances people commute is the same in both surveys. Yes. Okay, we know that that's true. That standard deviation is the same. Therefore, the variation in that distribution of the distances that they commute is going to be the same. Okay. Standard deviation is a measure of that variation from the mean. Okay, so we know the variation in that distribution of the distances they commute is going to be the same in both surveys because that standard deviation is the same. Okay, so C will be our correct answer for 25. Well, we're going to cover why D is wrong as well here. D says it's impossible to determine the variation in the distribution of the distances people commute because the means are different. No, we can still determine that variation by using that standard deviation with the mean, okay? With the different means. It still works. So D is incorrect there. C is our correct answer there. So C, really what you want to take from this is that standard deviation tells us that that variation in the distribution of those two things is going to be the same because they have that same standard deviation. Okay, 26. During an ice age, the average annual global temperature was at least, okay, that's a key word there. Anytime we see something like at least or at most or anything like that, that's telling us that we're going to have an equal sign, right? Some sort of inequality with an equal sign below it. So we know that the average annual global temperature is at least 4 degrees Celsius lower than the modern average. If the average annual temperature of an ice age is Y degrees, okay, Y degrees is this ice age temperature, and the modern annual average temperature is X degrees, which of the following must be true? Well, our average annual temperature when it's not an ice age is X. We know that when it is an ice age, it's 4 degrees less than that or more, okay, or more. So we know then that our Y is going to have to be it's going to have to be less than that X minus 4, right? Or I guess, hang on a minute, let me just quick check something. This is 26. We know that, yes, we know that X minus 4, right, is going to have to be greater than Y because whatever this average annual temperature is, right, whatever it is, let's say that it was an average of 73, okay? Let's say we had 73 minus 4 must be greater than whatever Y is, right? Y would have to be 69 or less, okay? So it would have to be something like 68, 67, 62, something like that. But that's really telling us that that's going to be our situation there, right? And notice how I was hesitant there for a minute. If you ever find yourself hesitant with an inequalities problem like that, you can just check it with real numbers as I did there, okay? So anytime you're hesitant with an inequality problem like that, just go ahead and check your numbers. Just make sure it works out just like I did there, okay? So that tells us that then D will be our answer for 26, okay? Because that's what matches our equation. If we were to put Y over on the left side, it would just be the same, right? We'd have Y is less than or equal to X minus 4, okay? So that one right there, not too bad at all. Just understanding inequalities, making sure we're paying attention to the word at least. Because if we didn't pay attention to at least and we just thought equals, we'd answer A and that would be incorrect. So it's important to pay attention to words like those. All right, with that, we go ahead and move on. We've got question 27 now. Okay, 27 is on that next page. Okay, I see I got a big graph. All right, in the XY plane, line M is perpendicular to line L. Line L is not shown. Okay, line M is. So line M is perpendicular to line L, which of the following could be an equation of line L? Okay, what I know is line L is perpendicular to line M. Okay, so I can just, since it doesn't give me points for line L, I can just make them up. So I can just pick wherever. We'll just pick right here, right? So we need it to form a 90-degree angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the slope of line M. So I see that I rise 3 for every 5 I run over. So my slope then for M is 3/5. So now I need to take the opposite reciprocal in order to find my slope of L. So the slope of L, right, we'll do slope L, is going to have to flip the sign. So we had positive for line M, so we're going to have negative. And then flip my denominator to my numerator and my numerator to my denominator. Okay, so then it's going to be minus 5/3. Okay, minus 5 over 3. So that's what my slope has to be. Now, what do we see here? We see that we have no equation that's in y equals mx plus b form. Okay, what should we do? Well, the first thing we should do is not panic. Okay, we can easily find the slope from something like this. It's not a problem. It's very, very simple. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to flip the sign of whatever our x value is. So in A, I see it's 5x. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that sign. So I'm going to say negative 5. Okay, and then after that, I divide by whatever my coefficient from my y variable is. I see that that's 3 there. So I divide by 3. That's my slope for that equation. I see that slope is negative 5 over 3, which is equal to my slope for L, so A will be my correct answer. Okay, so as far as things you should put in your notes here, one thing that you could put down that could be certainly helpful, and that would be certainly helpful on the SAT, is understanding how to get the slope from an equation set up like this. Okay, if you have an equation set up like that, what you're going to do is you're going to take the negative of whatever the coefficient of x is. Okay, so in this case it's 5, so we would have negative 5. Now if it were negative 5, we would have negative 5, which would make it positive 5. Okay, but in this case it's 5, so we take the negative of that gives us negative 5. Okay, then we divide that by whatever the coefficient of y is. Coefficient of y. Okay, now if the coefficient of y, in this case it's 3, is positive like that, then we just divide by 3. Now if the coefficient in front of y was negative 3, as it is in B, then we would have to divide by negative 3. Okay, so just understand that. Okay, we include the sign, we include that sign when we're dividing by those coefficients. Okay, all right, and that's going to give us our slope, right? That's going to give us our slope, but keep in mind that that's only for this form. Okay, that's only for the form where the x and the y are on the same side like that. Okay, so that's specific to an equation written like this. Okay, so if you're going to put this in your notes, make sure that you put that it's only for the equations that aren't in slope-intercept form, right? It's only for when those x's and y's are on the same side like that. Okay, if you're looking for your slope and your equation looks like this, y equals mx plus b, your slope is just m. Okay, so this is only for finding the slope when you have x and y on the same side. Okay, so that one right there, certainly not too rough of a problem. Once you understand how to get that slope, it becomes very, very easy. All right, now we got 28, so we got a maximum speed versus maximum height of 12 roller coasters. I see I have a line of best fit, speed on y-axis, height on x-axis. So the scatter plot above is showing my maximum height in feet and maximum speed, s in miles per hour, of 12 roller coasters, as well as the line of best fit for the data of the following, which best represents an equation for the line of best fit. Okay, all right, so where is this trying to trick you, right? Where is it trying to trick you, okay? Obviously, it's right here. Okay, if you didn't see that, that's okay. I'm teaching it to you right now. Anytime I'm looking at a graph and I'm asked to find an equation of line of best fit, or asked about an intercept, or asked to make an equation of a line, anything like that, immediately the thing that I'm always watching out for is what this x-axis is starting at. Okay, because if it's not starting at 0, then my intercept can't be this right here at 62. Okay, because that's not where it equals 0. So in order for me to find what that intercept is going to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take whatever distance it is till I get to 0. In this case, I see it's 140 till I get to 0. I'm going to move 140 to my right then. I see that that's going to get me 280 right here. I'm going to draw a line up. Okay, I see that that line, if I extend it over, is at about 92. Okay, if I draw a line from this 140, I see it's at about 62. Okay, so I got 92 then minus 62 is how much I rose, which I see is equal to 30. Okay, and I rose that 30 over 140. Okay, so now if I want to find my intercept at 0, right, I have to subtract another 30 for every 140. So I go 140 to my left, I got to subtract 30 from 62, and that's going to leave me with 32. Okay, so my intercept is going to be positive 32. So I can get rid of C and D. I know I have positive 32. I check to see if my slope can give me my answer. I see that I'm going to have to actually find it because I can't just tell by the sign in the direction of my line. So I actually have to find my slope. I see that my slope here, right? I see I'm increasing by 30 for every 140. So I'll plug that in my calculator. 30 over 140. That's going to give me my slope. And I see that that's 0.21. Okay, 0.21. So my answer there is going to be A. All right, so as far as things to understand for that, so that's 28, answer there is A, things to understand. Okay, notice how efficient this was. Okay, by me finding this intercept, using this equation here, right, finding that rise over run for that 140, not only was I able to find my intercept very, very quickly, but I was also able to then, after finding that intercept, use that same equation to find my slope. Okay, so by setting it up like that, and not using two different things, not trying to find the slope by using like something like this, I'm going to put it in blue so you can see it better. Okay, by not trying to find the slope with something like this, okay, and then also finding then that y-intercept based on that slope from that narrow thing right there, by not doing that and by looking big picture, right, from here, I'm going to put it in red so you can see it instead of blue, by looking from here all the way up, down, and then over to 140, I'm able to get a more accurate slope, but also I'm able to go ahead and find then what my intercept is very, very easily, okay? So that's a strategy I use. That's a strategy I recommend you use. Also notice how I'm annotating my graph. I recommend doing that so you don't make a simple mistake. Okay. It helps us prevent mistakes that's just from poor eyesight or poor vision by making sure we're drawing those lines. So that's something I recommend doing. All right, now we have Selena created a scale model of an airplane where 1 centimeter equals 6 meters on the airplane. The wingspan of the model is 10.7 centimeters. Selena wants to make a new model where a scale of 1 centimeter on the model equals 3 meters on the airplane. Which of the following best describes how the wingspan of the new model will compare to the wingspan of the first model? All right, well, if 1 centimeter is representing 3 meters, so it's representing less meters on this new model. Okay, if we're representing less meters on the new model, then this new model is going to have to be bigger, right? Because if we have 1 centimeter representing 6 meters in our first model, and it's 10.7 centimeters, then we could do 10.7 cm times 6m per cm, 6 meters per centimeter. We cancel out our units, and we have 10.7 times 6, which will give me something right around it'll give me something right around 64. I'm not going to put it in my calculator because I don't need to, right? I'm not going to waste time doing that. So I see that's going to give me something right around 64 meters is the actual height of the plane. Well, now in my new one, if I want it to be 3 meters for each centimeter that it is on the model, then I would take that 64, I'd divide it by 3, and that's going to give me something that's much larger than that 10 centimeters, right? That's going to give me something that's right around 21, okay? 21.4 or something, okay? So that's going to give me something that's just about double, right? Which makes sense because we're doubling that scale, right? We're going from it representing 6 to 3, right? Which means it's going to have to represent, it's going to have to be larger, right? Since it's representing less of that airplane per every centimeter. Okay, so we know that that's going to be a double, right? So let's find the answer that says a double. We have A, the wingspan of the new model will be 3 centimeters shorter. No. B, the wingspan of the new model will be 3 centimeters longer. No. Okay, those two would be really, really bad answer choices because we know we're looking at a rate problem here. Okay, C, the wingspan of the new model will be half as long as the wingspan of the first model. No, I just showed you it has to be 2 times as long as the wingspan. All right, so some of you may be thinking, why did he take the time to write out that ratio? I knew immediately that it was going to have to be double the size because it's representing half of the size that it was previously. And since it's representing half the size it was previously for every centimeter, it has to be double as big. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes doing that in your head is going to make you get it wrong. Okay, most of the time you'll be good. But here's the thing. If I see a question that's 29 on the SAT Math with Calculator section, it's probably 29 for a reason. And it's probably 29 because people are going to mess it up. Okay, those ones that are really late in the SAT Math section, they're designed to be tricky. Okay, and now if you try to do that in your head, the problem is you could end up answering C. Okay, you would probably recognize it's a ratio question, which is correct. It is a ratio question, but it's possible you'll mess up the ratio in your head. So with questions that are 29 and 30, you've got to be very, very careful. Okay, so when you get to questions really past 25 or past 23, you got to make sure you're paying close attention to the details because otherwise you might end up answering C here and C is incorrect. So as far as why I went ahead and wrote it out, I wrote it out because if we're dealing with a question at 29, we want to be careful, which means we're going to want to make sure we're using units to cancel, right? So I used my centimeters, I canceled those to get my thing in meters, then I divided by how many meters I had per centimeter, right, to get my answer in centimeters over here for my new model, okay? So if we're dealing with questions on 29 and 30, we just got to make sure we're paying close attention to detail, right? And we want to check our answers if we have time, okay? So I'm not saying you check your answer immediately, right? I would recommend, obviously, that you go through, answer all your questions first before you start going back and checking your answers. But when you go back and check your answer, you're going to want to write it out, make sure you cancel units, that way you can make sure you're getting this right, right? Also, if you weren't really sure where to go with this, you can use canceling units to find out where you're going if you didn't immediately recognize that ratio right off the bat. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Really, I'm just trying to stress with that, if you got a question on 29 or 30, just be careful because they're going to be tricky questions. So if it seems easier than it should be, just make sure that you're making the right ratio. All right, 30. Hongbo sold X cell phones in 2013. The number of cell phones he sold in 2014 was 128% greater than in 2013. And the number of cell phones he sold in 2015 was 29% greater than those in 2014. Which of the following represents the number of cell phones he sold in 2015? All right, well, 128% increase, right, versus 2013, that means that it's going to be 2.28 times whatever he sold in 2013. Now, why is it not 1.28? Well, 1.28 would be a 28% increase. 128% increase means that it's more than double, right? So that's going to be 2.28. So that's 2.28 times whatever he sold in 2013, which we know is X. Now after that, we see in 2015, he sells 29% more than he sold in 2014. So there we multiply by 1.29. So our answer then is going to be answer choice D. Okay, so that one right there, that one's not too bad. That one right there, I'm kind of surprised it's at 30 given the ease with which that one is possible to solve. The reason that it's probably at 30 in my opinion is this right here, this 128%. Okay, some people would see that and just write 1.28. Okay, so that's what I say about being careful with these 29 and 30s and anything past 23s. Just make sure that you're paying attention to details, not making simple mistakes. A lot of people at this point would be rushing on the SAT because they didn't pace it well. They would see 128% and they would write 1.28, but that's wrong. Okay, 128% increase means it's going to be 2.28. Okay, so you got to make sure you're paying close attention to details once you get past 23 especially, because they're going to be tricky questions because they're designed to be after that point. All right, so you got D for number 30. That takes us through the math section today. Let's go ahead and switch over to the other section. All right, let's get started with the reading section for today. So today we'll be going through passage 2 from SAT Practice Test 6. This one's a social science passage. I'll be really going through and trying to give you my insights, tips, tricks, advice for the SAT reading section. So you probably took SAT Practice Test 6 a few days ago if you're following our program. And as I go through here, one thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is things that I do that you didn't do, or things that you did that I also did, and just trying to kind of see if you got questions wrong, what you did that I don't do, right? So something I do that helps me get the right answer choice. If you missed it, that can be something you should pay attention to. If you got all of them right, then just try to pay attention to anything that I do that could potentially save you time, or anything that you saw that was a little bit confusing, or if there are any questions that you were unsure of that you ended up getting right, kind of see how I was able to get rid of wrong answer choices and things like that. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. Another thing that you can look for, even if you scored perfectly on this passage particularly, is you can look at the things that I'm highlighting or underlining and kind of try to get a good idea of if you highlighted or underlined those same things, because if you didn't and you highlighted or underlined different things and you found those things weren't useful, then this can help you kind of figure out the things that I'm highlighting that will be useful to you when you go through on your next practice test or your next SAT. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the passage. All right, so we got the passages adopted from Stephen Coleman, Scott Anthony, and David Dean Morrison. It's titled Public Trust in the News. Okay, copyright here is 2009 by Stephen Coleman. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. We got the news as a form of public knowledge, unlike personal or private knowledge, such as the health of one's friends and family, the conduct of a private hobby, a secret liaison. Public knowledge increases in value as it is shared by more people. The data of an election and the claims of rival candidates, that the causes and consequences of an environmental disaster, a debate on how to frame a particular law, the latest reports from a war zone. These are all examples of public knowledge that people are generally expected to know in order to be considered informed citizens. Thus, in contrast to personal or private knowledge, which is generally left to individuals to pursue or ignore, public knowledge is promoted even to those who might not think it matters to them. In short, the circulation of public knowledge, including the news, is generally regarded as a public good which cannot be solely demand-driven. The production, circulation, and reception of public knowledge is a complex process. It is generally accepted that public knowledge should be authoritative, but there is also not always common agreement about what the public needs to know, who is best placed to relate it and explain it, and how the authoritarian reputation should be determined and evaluated. Historically, newspapers such as the Times and broadcasters such as BBC were widely regarded as the trusted shapers of authoritative agendas and conventional wisdom. They embodied the Oxford English Dictionary's definition of authority as the power over or title to influence the opinions of others. As part of the general process, the transformation of authority whereby there has been a reluctance to uncritically accept traditional sources of public knowledge, the demand has been for all authority to make explicit the frames of values which determine their decisions. Centers of views of production, as our focus groups show, have not been exempt from this process. Not surprisingly, perhaps some news journalists feel uneasy about this renegotiation of their authority. Despite the we've got editors are increasingly casting a glance at most read lists on their own and others' websites to work out which stories matter to readers and viewers, and now the audience, which used to know its place, is being asked to act as a kind of journalistic ombudsman ruling on our credibility. The result of democratizing access to TV news could be political disengagement by the majority and a dumbing down through a popularity contest of stories. Despite the rhetorical bluster of these statements, they amount to more than straightforward professional defensiveness, and their reference to an audience which used to know its place and conflation between democratization and dumbing down. They are seeking to argue for a particular mode of public knowledge, one which is shaped by experts immune from populist pressures, and disseminated to attentive but mainly passive recipients. It is a view of citizenship that closes down the opportunities for popular involvement in the making of public knowledge by reinforcing the professional claims of experts. The journalists quoted above are right to feel uneasy, for there is at almost every institutional level in contemporary society skepticism towards the epistemological authority of expert elites. There is a growing feeling, as expressed by several of our focus group participants, that the news media should be informative rather than authoritative. The job of journalists should be to give the news as raw as it is without putting their share on it, or their slant on it. And the people should be given sufficient information from which we should be able to make our opinions of our own. At stake here are two distinct conceptions of authority. The journalists we have quoted are resistant to the democratization of news, the supremacy of the clickstream, which editors raise or lower the profile of stories according to the number of readers clicking on them online, the parody of popular culture with serious news, the demands of some audience members for raw news rather than constructed narratives. Okay, and then we've got our table. All right, so why did I highlight the things I highlighted? Let's quick go through that, and then we'll get into the questions. Okay, so as always up top, we got a little intro here. I'm always going to make sure I highlight my title, my copyright year, and my authors, so I did that up there. Next thing we have is public knowledge increases in value as it's shared by more people. Okay, this is a claim. Anytime that I have a big claim or a major claim, I'm going to make sure that I highlight that. So in this case, we had a major claim saying that public knowledge increases in value as it's shared by more people. All right, next we have, in short, the circulation of public knowledge, including the news, is generally regarded as a public good which cannot be solely demand-driven. Once again, we have a major claim right here, okay, saying that the production of or circulation of public knowledge or the news should be regarded as a public good which can't be solely demand-driven. So arguing for possibly some sort of regulation and thing like that. So that's a major claim that it can't be solely demand-driven. Okay, next thing I have down here, we've got the demand has been for all authority to make explicit the frames of values which determine their decisions. Okay, so this is a demand from consumers, okay, demand from consumers for all authority, so all newsmakers or publishers, to make explicit or to announce what they value in determining their decisions on what to publish. Okay, so this is a claim from the audience, or a claim from the public, so a claim from the public, or a request, rather. I would say rather it's a request from the public. A request from the public for more transparency. So for transparency. Okay. All right. So why did I highlight that? Okay. Well, that it isn't a claim necessarily in the sense that it's not a claim from one of the publishers. What it is a claim from is it's basically a claim from the public or a request from the public. Okay. The public is saying, hey, we want more transparency from news publishers. So that's pretty much their claim or their request. Okay, so that's why I highlighted that. Okay, so we can have claims from publishers. We can also have claims from the audience members. Okay, so here we have, not surprisingly, perhaps some news journalists feel uneasy about the renegotiation of their authority. Okay, so this is showing me a response. Okay, so I talked about 2 days ago about cause and effect in the literature section. Cause and effect on the social science section or on the history section, same thing. Anytime I see cause and effect, I want to make sure that I highlight that. Okay, in this case, it was a cause, a demand for more transparency from news organizations, to a response, them not wanting to give that, or them feeling uneasy or not wanting to give up that transparency. So they're not wanting to give that transparency. That's their response or the effect of this demand for transparency. So that's why I highlighted that. Next up, we got the result of democratizing access to TV news could be political disengagement by the majority and a dumbing down through a popularity contest of stories. Okay, so this is a claim from publishers. Claim from publishers. Once again, anytime I have a claim, I want to make sure I highlight that. So that one, once again, claim. Next, one which is shaped by experts immune from populist pressures and disseminated to attentive but mainly passive recipients. All right. So we're talking here about how they're seeking for a particularly mode of public knowledge, right? They want one that's shaped by experts, okay, who are immune from populist pressures, okay, so immune from what the audience actually wants, and disseminated to attentive but largely passive recipients. So this is really talking what news publishers want. So this is news publishers, what they are demanding, okay? So we were given what the audience is demanding, now we're given what news publishers are demanding or what they want. Okay, so that right there is a contrast between what came before, and if I have something that contrasts like that, I'm going to want to highlight that. So that right there, highlighted it because it's a contrast to what those consumers wanted, and we talked about that before. Next up, we got skepticism towards the authority of expert elites, right? There's increased skepticism towards the authority of expert elites from consumers or from audience members. So that was really important because that shows really the divide, I'd say, between audience and publisher. So I'm just going to put audience, odd, and pub. Okay, so there's a great divide between audience and publisher that's being highlighted by that skepticism towards those expert elites or those journalists. Okay, so that right there, it's connecting two big subjects in our passage. So that's why I highlighted it there. So connection between two big subjects. Okay, our two main subjects are the publishers and our audience. So two main subjects. Okay, if we have a connection like that, comparison, you saw me contrast them. Right here, we're really seeing a claim from one about the other, so that's why I highlighted that. I think that's going to be important. Next thing, we have another claim from the audience. They want informative news rather than authoritative news. So once again, that's a claim from the audience. I'm going to highlight that. Next up, we got giving the news as raw as it is, no slant on it. People want sufficient information from which they can make opinions of their own. So once again, continuing that claim on what the audience wants. All right, so with that, we had a table, and now we can go and get into our questions. So we got the main purpose of the passage is to what? Well, this is going to be a big picture question because it's asking us about the main purpose of the passage. So big picture question. So we want, it's also a purpose question, right? A lot of times question types are going to intersect a little bit, right? In this case, we want the purpose of the whole passage, so the big picture purpose, right? What's the purpose of that whole passage? Well, the purpose of this whole passage, if we really break it down, is okay, my screen just went blank. All right, there we go. Now we're back. All right, so the main purpose of the passage, is, if we are really to break it down, is we're really talking about the change in the perception of the news media as a source of public knowledge over time. Okay, we're talking about how the news, it used to be perceived as trustworthy and credible way back when with BBC and the New York Times, and now people are much, much less trusting of the news. Okay, they think that it's biased. They think that publishers need to be more transparent, right? So that's really talking about the change in the perception from the audience on what the news should be. Okay, we have greater demands from the audience on what news should be. As far as why A, C, and D are wrong, we can go through that real quick. We've got analyzing the technological developments. We don't analyze technological developments, so that's why A is wrong. C, show how journalists frames of value influence the production of the news stories. Okay, we touch on that a little bit, but this is too narrow, okay, because we're asked for the big picture of the whole passage, the main purpose of the whole passage. This would be focusing too much on a couple sentences, so that's too narrow. Another thing to watch out for with social science and history sections is putting your own political values on it. Never answer a choice just because it's what you believe politically. Answer the choice because it's what's supported by the text. All right, next we have D, challenge the conventional view that news is a form of public knowledge. Okay, we're not challenging that conventional view that news is public knowledge because we actually make that statement that it is public knowledge in paragraph 1. I believe it was paragraph 1 at least, but either way, we make it somewhere, so D's wrong. All right, question 12. We got, according to the passage, which expectation do traditional authorities now face? Well, at this point, they're now facing that expectation to be transparent about their beliefs and assumptions. That was something I highlighted, and I can go and show you where that is as well. It looks like we got evidence for our next question, so we'll probably be able to use that as well when I go ahead and find that for you here. Okay, that's going to be right here, right? This is really jumbled, so I'm going to erase it. Okay, just erase this so you can see what I'm highlighting. Switch it to blue so it's more transparent as well. All right, so we got right here, we talked about how the demand has been for all authority, which is those news organizations, to make explicit the frames of value which determine their decisions. Okay, so we're really arguing for more transparency on what they're choosing to publish. I see that's 36 to 38 there. So I'm going to look for an answer choice that has that, and let's see if we have one that does. Okay, I see I've got 33 to 38 for 13. That's C. Yeah, so we can include 33 to 36 as well. I'll just quick check that, make sure that it looks all good, right? That would be as part of the general process, the transformation of authority, whereby has been a reluctance to uncritically accept traditional sources of public knowledge, the demand for authority to make explicit the frames of values which determine their decisions. Really, the reason that they included 33 to that, in my opinion, was just because that's the start of the sentence, right? We didn't want to break up the sentence. So either way, as long as we got 36 to 38 in there, we're all good. Answer is going to be C for 13 then. So C for 13. All right, now we got question 14. I'm going to switch back to my black pen real quick. All right, question 14. As far as question types, I'll just quick touch on that real quick. 13 is obviously an evidence question, just supporting your answer with evidence. 12 Which expectation do traditional authorities now face? This one's pretty much a little detailed question. You just had to go back and find that. That was in paragraph, whatever paragraph 36 through 38 was, just finding that detail in there that they need more transparency. Okay, all right, now 14. This is a words in context question. How do we know it's words in context question? Well, anytime we have most nearly means, we know it's a words in context question. Okay, so anytime I have words in context question, I'm going to find my word, my line, go there, come up with my own answer choice first before looking at my options. So I got line 24, common. Let's go find line 24. All right, so we've got, but there is not always common agreement about what the public needs to know. Okay, so I'm going to need some more context before I come up with a word there. So I'm going to go back to the start of the sentence. And it's okay if we always need more context to go back and get more. So we have the production, circulation, reception of public knowledge is complex. It is generally accepted that public knowledge should be authoritative. But there is not always common agreement or shared agreement or widespread agreement. So I'd really be looking for it. Shared agreement or widespread agreement would be two good options there, right? We'd be talking about shared agreement among people or widespread agreement among the population about what the public needs to know. So I'm looking for shared or widespread would be two good options there. So let's see if we have either of those. I see I don't have shared, but I do have widespread, so widespread would be my answer there. Okay, we wouldn't say familiar agreement. Okay, we wouldn't say numerous agreement either. We're really looking for something that touches on it being a common, a shared, or a widespread agreement, in that there's consensus. Okay, not ordinary agreement either. Okay, widespread and common are really trying to indicate that there would be a consensus agreement there. All right, 15, the author most likely includes the extended quotations in lines 43 to 55 to do what? This is a purpose question. Okay, what is the purpose of including those lines? So this is a purpose question asking us the purpose of including lines 43 to 53. What is it doing? Why is the author including it? So let's go take a look at those. Right, we go back down here. We've got, not surprisingly, perhaps some news journalists feel uneasy about the renegotiation of their authority. Then we're talking about the opinions of a news organization about that renegotiation of what they're supposed to do. Okay, so we're really citing a representation of what claim we just made. So let's see what we got in our options here. Or I guess it's 15, isn't it? All right, so we have presenting contradictory examples. No, we're really showing that claim we just made. B, citing representative opinions. Yes, absolutely, that's what we're doing. We're showing those opinions from those people that represent those editors and those publishers to support how they're reluctant to give up that power. Okay, and then C, criticizing typical viewpoints. We're not criticizing any typical viewpoints, so C is wrong. D, suggesting viable alternatives. We aren't making viable alternatives either. All right, question 16. All right, let's find the question type real quick. So we got the authors indicate public knowledge is coming to believe, or that the public is coming to believe journalist reports should avoid what? Okay, we talk about judgments. Okay, this is pretty much a little detailed question. Actually, this one's really a big picture question. I take that back. Okay, because we really touch on this throughout the whole passage. So this one's going to be a big picture question in all reality. Okay, I take that back. That's my mistake. It's not a little detailed question. This is really touching on the big picture. Because our big picture throughout pretty much most of this passage is people are more skeptical about journalists and publishers, and they want journalists and publishers now to avoid having those personal judgments about the events reported. Okay, so 16 is going to be A. We talk about how they want the information as raw as it is. Okay, so no personal judgments there. They don't say that journalists should avoid more information than necessary. They actually want more information. C, quotations from authorities on subject matter. No, they don't say to avoid quotes. D, details that the subjects of news reports wish to keep private. We're not touching on private versus public as far as what people want reported there. Okay, so that there is going to be A. That's pretty much a big picture question in my opinion, because we really touch on that throughout most of the passage. So 16 would be A, personal judgments about the events being reported. We don't want that. Or consumers don't want that. I see you got evidence for the next one. And I just want to show you, the reason I'm not showing you the lines for that is because I want to show you how it's possible to find those lines of evidence without looking at the lines, so you can really come up with your own answer choice there. Okay, so if we really think about what's going to support our answer for 16, personal judgments about events being reported, that's where we talk about consumers wanting that raw information. So let's just go find where we talk about that. Okay, we see it right here. I'm going to erase some of this so you can see it better. Okay, I'll put mine in blue now so you can even see it even more clearly. Okay, we talk about how there's a growing feeling among focus group participants the news should be informative rather than authoritative. Okay, informative meaning giving us just the information rather than telling us what its importance is. journalists giving the news as raw as it is, okay, so without any slant, without putting their slant on it. Okay, people should be given sufficient information from which they can make their own opinions. Okay, I see that that's pretty much 70 to 77, 70 to 77. So that's really what my evidence should be there if I can find that as a choice. Okay, so you see if you can recall key parts of the passage. In this case, 70 to 77, right? And you saw that I highlighted that as well. Okay. So once you understand that as you go through being able to make those claims and things, that can really help you. Okay, so in this case, understanding kind of having a general roadmap of where the passage and things are, that's helpful as well because we were able to not go ahead and read these ones and waste time reading those because we knew we wanted to find the part where we talked about giving the news as raw as it was. Okay, so that was really a big thing there. All right, so 17 answer there is going to be D. Now we can go and move on to question 18. All right, so this one right here, we see most nearly means. We know it's going to be words in context question. Obviously, 17 is an evidence question. I'll just go ahead and put that down there. 18, we got words in context because we have the most nearly means question. So words in context. All right, so we got line 74, raw. We just read through line 74, so we'll go back, come up with our own answer choice for what raw should mean. We go back up, 74. We've got journalists should be able to give the news as raw as it is, right, or as unfiltered. Really, unfiltered is going to be pretty much the only answer choice that jumps to the top of my head here. Giving the news as raw as it is, giving the news as unfiltered as it is, as complete as it is. So unfiltered would be my #1 choice. If not, then I would say complete if that's an answer choice. So let's go down, take a look, see what we got. Okay, so we have unfiltered is an option. We don't have complete as an option, so we know unfiltered would be our answer there. So 18 should be A. We wouldn't say giving the news as exposed as it is. We're really talking about giving all of it, okay, nothing being held back, so that would be unfiltered. Okay, if we're exposing something, we just wouldn't really say that news being raw would be news being exposed, because we can expose news while putting a spin on it and while filtering out some parts of it, but raw in this case really just means unfiltered. We're not taking anything out. Okay, not harsh, not inexperienced. Those two do not fit. Okay, 19, based on the table. Okay, this is a data interpretation question. Anytime that we are asked to interpret data from a table and apply it to the text, that's basically what I would call a data interpretation question. So based on the table, in which year were people the most trusting of the news media? All right, well, let's go back up to our table then and find when they were most trusting of the news media. So we go back up, we look for where they're the most trusting. That's going to be where they have the highest percentage who say that they get the facts straight. Right, so in 1985, 55% of people said that news organizations are getting the facts straight. We also have the lowest percent saying that they have inaccurate stories. We see that they have a fairly high percent. We have the highest percent saying they're independent, saying they're influenced by powerful organizations. We have the least percent. So that's really showing that in 1985, they're very, not necessarily very trusting, but they are the most trusting out of all those years. So 1985 would be our answer for 19. So we go down, find our answer there. 19 is going to have to be A. All right, question 20. We've got which statement's best supported by the information presented in the table. So this is also data interpretation. Okay, so in this case, really the best way to do these, in this case with all of this data, there being so much up here, we see in this table we have so many numbers. Really our best move here is just going to be to read through our claims and then figure out which one's true. Because there's not really any trend we're going to be able to pick out with all those numbers. It would take forever to find the trend. All right, so we have option A. Between 1985 and 2011, the proportion of inaccurate news stories rose dramatically. Well, we can quick take a look. Inaccurate news, proportion of inaccurate news stories between 1985 and 2011. So 1985 often have inaccurate stories. Saying that it rose, often have inaccurate stories. We go down, we look at 20A. Okay, the proportion of inaccurate stories rose dramatically. Okay, we can't make that claim because this table up here, this is people's perspectives. Okay, this is percentage of respondents that are seeing news stories as inaccurate or favoring one side. Okay, so they may think that there's an increase in them having inaccurate stories, right? They may think that there's more, but the thing is that that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more. Okay, so we can't say that those proportions of inaccurate stories did rise dramatically. We can say that people think that they did, but we can't say that they actually did because that's people's perspectives, and perspectives can be influenced by a wide range of things, and perspectives change over time. So we can't say for sure for 20 that the actual proportion of inaccurate news stories rose. We can say the perception of inaccurate news stories rose, but we can't say the actual proportion did. Next, we have between 1992 and 2003, the proportion of people who believed news organizations were biased almost doubled. Let's quick take a look. So we got 1992, 2003, news organizations being, I think it said biased, I do believe. Let me just quick check, double check that. News organizations being biased almost doubled. So let's quick take a look. All right, we have bias would be tending to favor one side. We know our years were, I believe, 1991 to 2003. Let me just quick check what the years were. Years are 1992 to 2003. So we're seeing if there's a double there. All right, so we have 1992 to 2003. We see that we go from 63 to 66. That is not a double, so therefore that is going to be wrong. So I go down, B is going to be wrong for 20. All right, what about C? Between 2003 and 2007, people's views of the accuracy, independence, and fairness of news organizations changed very little. Let's go take a look at 2003, accuracy and fairness. Accuracy would be getting the facts straight. We see that there's only a 3% change, also only a 3% change here. Independence, very, very little change here as well. And then little change down here. There's no change between these. So yes, there is very, very little change between 2003 and 2007. C would have to be our correct answer for question 20. All right, so 20 is going to have to be C. Now we got 21. Okay, 21. The 2011 data in the table best serves as evidence of what? Okay, once again, this is interpreting data and applying it to the text. So we're interpreting data, applying it to the text. 2011 data in the table serves as evidence of what? Well, let's go take a look. So we've got 2011 data in the table. Okay, well, one thing that just jumped out to me as I scrolled up is I saw an 80 here, which is much, much greater than these other values. And that's are often influenced by powerful people and organizations. We see there's a big, big spike in that. We also see a big, big drop in people thinking that news is independent. We see a big spike in them believing that there's inaccurate stories, a big drop in them thinking they get the facts straight. So overall, that's much, much increased distrust of the media there. So I'm looking for an answer choice that touches on increased distrust of the media. Best serves as evidence of what? A, political disengagement by the majority? No. B, the professional claims of experts? No. C, the skepticism towards the authority of expert elites? Yes, there's much, much more skepticism towards these elites who are journalists and who are publishing this information. So the answer for 21 is going to have to be C. They're very, very skeptical towards those elites making those claims is what that's showing. So greater distrust in the media. So as always, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If this video is helpful to you, there will be a donation link in the description when it's up and running. Any private SAT tutoring I'm doing will be linked in the description. Any private college admissions consulting I'm doing will be linked in the description. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and have a good day.